Welcome everyone back to the Textbook Boxing Podcast. This is the first one of these that I've done in quite a while. But I thought, given we've got Canelo Crawford this weekend, I would bring it back and see what the feedback is like. So I'm just going to jump straight into it with Canelo versus Crawford. And a little bit of a background is whenever I make predictions, I purposefully don't watch anyone else's. I don't like to be influenced by other people's predictions and breakdowns. I like everything to be me. And that's why some predictions I've got very, very right in the past, and some predictions I've got very, very, very wrong in the past. But they are all my predictions. And I say all that because my thoughts on this, I think, are quite interesting, or you'll find quite interesting. But before I go into that, I thought I'd break down each fighter individually. So Canelo Alvarez is a power punching pressure fighter with good defense and good combinations. He's also got very good timing. You saw that in his fights against, probably against Caleb Plant and Billy Joe Saunders. He's a guy who, even when he's not throwing, you feel his presence. He stands with a high guard and he slowly walks you down, catches shots on the arms, parries, slips a little bit inside, and then tries to get in with a double jab to the head and a right hand to the body and occasionally a left hook. That's Canelo Alvarez's game. And because he's so good on the inside, and because he's so explosive with one shot, very rarely do people try and push him back. The times when people have pushed Canelo back, it's when they've kind of overwhelmed him with activity and a little bit of range. And Canelo, in his older age now, he likes everything at his own pace. I watched his fight against Daniel Jacobs previously. And it was weird seeing Canelo with doing that many things against a fighter. Sounds ridiculous. But when Canelo Alvarez had to close the range against Daniel Jacobs in that fight, and if you go back and watch clips of it, you'll see Canelo doing a lot more jabbing and a lot more head movement than he does nowadays. Canelo now is very much a flat-footed fighter who likes to walk his opponents down. It's more his presence and small little movements he does with his hands and his head, rather than big movements and jabs and straight shots that allow him to get inside. And that's been probably the best example of that I can think of is Kovalev. Canelo wasn't doing a lot in those in the fight, but there was the sense that the opponent is always a little bit handcuffed because they know what Canelo is capable of in throwing really, really powerful, quick combinations on the inside. And Canelo has got very, very good defense. He's very good slipping up close. Not unhittable, but pretty good defense and a good chin. And he's got, decent boxing brain, but he has got slow feet these days. He has got slow feet. I would actually go as far to say that Canelo, especially I did not like his performance against Skull at all. Not at all. I think it was very much a lazy fight. And I think that version of Canelo is beaten quite handily by Crawford, personally. Okay, enough for Canelo. But Crawford, bit more tricky to pin down. Switch hitter, primarily likes to fight on the back foot, but basically sort of busts you up with I think Crawford is best out of a southpaw stance. I think he's got a very, very good right jab. People really, I think in the run up to this fight, have over talked about the Madrimov fight and under talked about the Spence fight. People forget how he broke Spence up with that jab. It's a very good, I think Crawford is a right-handed person naturally. His right hook, I spoke about it for years before he's gone on this knockout streak, is a really, really good shot. And the thing that's good about Crawford is he's very good being second. Very often, once Crawford's got a rhythm of guys, they will pounce in because they'll look to get away from the jab. And in doing so, they're going to try and counter the jab, and then Crawford will let them get their first phase off, and then Crawford will counter. He's got very, very good hand placement, Crawford. And it allows him to counter really well. He's got I think, got underrated power. And quite a lot of the time with Crawford, he sinks in really quite good body shots that I don't think people see a lot. I watched the Spence fight recently, well, bits of it, and Crawford does have some good body shots. It's very funny that a fighter with as many knockouts as Crawford has still isn't really regarded as much of a puncher at all. I think that's funny. You know, how many people have done that to Spence? You know, he didn't just outbox him. He completely broke him up. You know, Spence, a guy who's, you know, took Kell Brook's best shots. You know, this is a guy with a good chin. And Crawford did as well, actually. Canelo's got a great chin, but Crawford does as well. So how do I see the fight going? I think Crawford wins this. I think Crawford wins this quite handily, to be brutally honest. Which is probably going to surprise and maybe anger some people, and maybe make me look really, really stupid in a few days. But when I look at the matchup, the thing that Crawford really struggles with is when he can't quite pin down a fighter. He can't take Madrimov as probably the best example. Crawford couldn't get the rhythm of Madrimov. Madrimov was moving in and out, up and down. He was slipping a lot of the jabs that Crawford was throwing. Crawford sometimes likes to sit with a high guard, not unlike Canelo actually, and Madrimov was hitting him with straight right hands. Crawford was in the southpaw. And activity. Crawford is a fighter that if he can get to grips with you, if he can kind of pin you down, you're fucked. You know, probably another good example is in the Sean Porter fight. I haven't seen that fight recently, but from memory, Porter kind of made Crawford uncomfortable with activity and physicality. If there's one thing that gives Crawford problems, it's that. And that is the opposite of what Canelo has been in his recent fights. When I look at Canelo, I see a guy who is very, very good, but also quite limited against it's obvious the limitations that Canelo's fighting style has become. Canelo is fighting with much, much less volume than he was in the past. But I think also what's dangerous is that I think the biggest thing is that the foot speed is gone. You can kind of get away with not throwing a lot of punches, depending on who you are. But if you're going to be a front foot pressure fighter kind of style, to do it with not a lot of foot speed is going to get you caught out against at the highest level. And you saw that against Skull. You know, obviously I'm talking about the elite level. So, you know, guys like, you know, Munguia and, you know, obviously Belanga and all these guys, you know, Canelo can still destroy these guys. But at the highest level, I think Canelo struggles against that style. And to me, Canelo's losing his foot speed and activity, and foot speed and activity is the only way, or one of the few ways that I think he could beat a Crawford. So that's how and also, you know, Crawford is effectively jumping up 3 weight divisions to fight Canelo. He's only had one fight at 154. He's jumping up, what is it, light middle, all the way to super middle. You know, but stranger things have happened. Crawford, for anyone who, you know, I never quite know how accurate BoxRec is, but Crawford's actually got an over 3-inch reach advantage on Canelo. So how I see the fight going is Canelo and Crawford both very much looking at each other for the first round. I then see Canelo trying to stalk Crawford over the next 2, 3, 4 rounds. Crawford basically stepping back, using the foot movement, countering the occasional Canelo shots. Canelo doesn't throw a lot of shots now, and Crawford is extremely good at countering them. I then think Canelo will pick it up a bit in the mid rounds when he realizes he's a bit behind. Maybe win a bit back, try and impose his physicality. Then Crawford makes a bit more of a download and wins the fight 8-4-ish kind of fight, relatively clean. I don't see this as being a controversial victory. I think Crawford wins this quite easily, to be honest, and that's probably going to annoy some people. But I don't intend to. That's just my opinion. Canelo is also a bit more of a single shot puncher now. Canelo used to throw in combinations in the past, and he still occasionally does, but they're more single shots now, and Skull was actually able to counter Crawford quite relatively effectively. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of shots that Skull landed, but there wasn't a whole lot of shots Canelo landed. And I think if Skull can do it, Crawford's definitely going to have the skill to. And I don't think Canelo is the kind of guy. I don't think he's going to have the foot speed to impose the physicality on Crawford. I see Crawford using his feet and kind of dancing around Canelo with his activity. And I think the jab could be a real problem for Canelo and you saw that in the Spence fight. I think I see Canelo being hit with a lot of jabs and it not necessarily hurting him in any time, but I see Crawford picking up points. Could I see a scenario where Canelo just out-muscles Crawford? Yeah, I could see it, but I don't actually think it's that likely. I always say things as I see it. I'm never one to mince my words, and I see this as a 68-32 kind of fight in Crawford's favour. I'm really intrigued what happens. And I'm really looking forward to the fight. Let me know how wrong I am in the comments below. This is the first one I've done of these in a while, so apologies. It was a bit more, a bit less entertaining than usual, but I'll be get right back at it. And yeah, that's the end of this podcast. I'm out.